Hello and welcome to Workers Comp Unwrapped, the podcast that simplifies workers' compensation for physicians. So, let's get started. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 17 of Workers Comp Unwrapped, with Aneeq, your host, and with our guest Angela, who has 15 years of experience in the industry. Today, we are talking about cannabis in workers' comp. New MTUS guidelines.
Right.
Wait, hold on. Let me just pause right there for a second. You listening right now might be wondering why I just kicked things off by reading that exact introduction so formally, like totally verbatim.
Yeah, it sounded a little robotic there for a second.
I know, right? But, well, there's a good reason. Because today's deep dive is an analysis of a truly, just a fascinating set of notes and research that you shared with us.
Yeah.
We're taking those documents, which, they cover navigating these entirely new billing compliance rules. And our mission today is to dissect exactly why this single topic manages to do so much at once.
Oh, it really does.
Yeah. It completely confuses medical providers, it utterly frustrates the insurance payers, and it triggers these massive legal debates all at the exact same time. So we're unpacking this just for you today.
It really is the perfect storm of bureaucratic chaos. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the core friction that's outlined in the research really just comes down to a fundamental mismatch in velocity.
A mismatch in velocity.
Yeah, because you have state laws, you have medical opinions, and then you have financial reimbursement standards, right? And they're all evolving at completely different speeds.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Because we've got states that are legalizing and normalizing medical cannabis left and right. You can hardly drive down a highway in some states without seeing a massive billboard for a dispensary.
Exactly. The culture has moved fast.
Right. Public perception has shifted incredibly rapidly over the last 10 years. But the overarching workers' compensation systems, they are built to be inherently, almost stubbornly cautious.
Oh, absolutely.
So we have this tension, where the actual practice of medicine, along with the patient demand, has basically sprinted way past the actual billing rules.
Right. And it creates this incredible bottleneck. Because you have to remember that workers' comp, it's not just about general health care. It's an insurance apparatus that is deeply, deeply rooted in risk mitigation.
Cost containment, basically.
Exactly. Cost containment. So when a new treatment paradigm arrives, and especially one that comes with, all the historical and legal baggage of cannabis, the system doesn't just adapt overnight.
No, of course not.
The medical reality on the ground is moving at an absolute sprint, right? But the bureaucratic infrastructure is moving at a glacial pace.
It actually reminds me of a tech problem. It's like trying to run a brand new cutting-edge software program on a 20-year-old operating system.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Think about it. The patients and the doctors, they're the sleek new software. They're ready to go. They see the utility in the treatment, and they just want to execute the program right now. But the underlying infrastructure, the payers, the compliance officers, the medical billing codes, that's the ancient operating system. And when you try to load that new software, the system just crashes because it fundamentally doesn't know how to process the information.
Yeah, it literally lacks the coding language for it. That is a perfect analogy. The system is crashing because it just lacks the correct code to process what the provider is asking it to do.
Right.
And, in that crash, providers find themselves trapped in this incredibly uncomfortable triangle.
Of the triangle. Yeah, break that down for us.
So on the first side, you have intense patient demand, right? You have injured workers who are in actual pain and they're asking for alternative options.
Which is totally understandable.
Completely. But then on the second side, you have these strict, unyielding compliance concerns from medical boards. And then on the third side, you have fierce payer resistance from the insurance companies.
Man, what a nightmare. And for you listening, if you've ever wondered why a popular or, seemingly effective medical trend suddenly just hits a brick wall and gets bottlenecked in the healthcare system, this triangle is exactly why.
Yeah, it's never just a simple question of whether a treatment works.
Exactly. It's about whether the massive entrenched system has actually built the pipes to handle the paperwork for it. And right now, the pipes are completely clogged.
They really are. Which brings us to what happens when regulatory bodies actually try to lay down those pipes and put the rules on paper.
Right, the MTUS.
Yes. The research you provided focuses heavily on the newly updated medical treatment utilization schedule, which we commonly refer to as the MTUS.
The MTUS.
Yeah.
And that's basically the ultimate rule book for what gets approved and what gets denied, right?
That's exactly what it is.
Since the system has been lagging so far behind the culture, I imagine providers have been waiting with bated breath for these updated guidelines to provide, like, any sort of clarity. So what did these new guidelines actually say? Did they finally just open the doors?
Well, no. What's fascinating here is how carefully they tread. I mean, the MTUS does formally acknowledge that cannabis may have limited use.
Okay, limited.
Yes, we really have to emphasize the word limited there. It is strictly focused on certain chronic pain situations, and it is heavily, heavily restricted.
So it's not a free-for-all.
Oh, absolutely not a free-for-all. It continues to prioritize strictly evidence-based treatment and requires immense medical necessity documentation.
Wait, hold on. Let me just play devil's advocate here for a second, because I want to make sure you and I and the listener right there with us are on the exact same page here.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's say a patient is in legitimate, fully documented chronic pain. They simply request cannabis from their doctor, and the doctor evaluates them, agrees it's a good idea, and writes it down. Are you telling me that's still not enough?
Seriously, that is one of the most critical takeaways from the documents we are analyzing. The barrier to entry is just exceptionally high. A provider cannot simply write, patient requested cannabis for back pain and expect the system to approve it.
Wow.
The strict, non-negotiable barrier is that providers must unequivocally prove that traditional treatments have either entirely failed or caused significant documented side effects.
So it's not an alternative option, then. It's an absolute last resort.
Precisely. Cannabis is strictly viewed as a last consideration. I mean, it is never the first option, and it's honestly rarely even the second or third.
Right.
A provider has to document a long, verifiable trail of exhausted options.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. What does an exhausted option actually look like in practice? Give me a scenario, so we can picture the actual hoops a patient has to jump through.
Sure. So let's imagine a hypothetical patient who suffered a severe spinal cord injury from a fall on a construction site.
Okay, awful situation.
Right. Under the MTUS guidelines, the doctor can't just jump to cannabis for pain management. First, they have to show they tried physical therapy for, say, 6 months. And the chart must explicitly show it didn't improve the patient's functional mobility.
Got it.
Then, maybe they moved on to high-dose NSAIDs, like ibuprofen or naproxen, but the patient developed severe stomach ulcers as a side effect.
Ouch. So the NSAIDs are a documented failure.
Exactly. Next, they might be put on traditional opioids, but after a few months, the patient develops a dangerous tolerance, or maybe severe respiratory side effects.
So they've just been through the ringer.
They really have. And only then, at the very end of that long, painful road, with every single failure and side effect meticulously detailed in the medical chart, does the MTUS crack the door open for cannabis.
Okay, so let's assume the doctor does all that. They run the absolute gauntlet. They document the failed physical therapy. They document the stomach ulcers from the anti-inflammatories. They document the adverse reactions to traditional painkillers.
Let's check every box.
Yeah, they finally prove that cannabis is the absolute last remaining option on the table. So how do they actually get paid? Because the documents say this is where things get, quote, very messy fast.
Oh, and messy might be the understatement of the year.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Here's the biggest shocker from the billing rules. In many of these workers' comp systems, the actual cannabis product itself is often not directly reimbursable through traditional billing structures.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
They can prove the patient desperately needs it, but they can't actually bill for it.
You heard that correctly. The provider cannot just submit a standard invoice for the physical cannabis product.
That is insane. Why?
Well, to understand why, we really have to look at the mechanism of the federal shadow hanging over all of this. Under federal law, cannabis is still a Schedule I controlled substance.
Right, the federal level.
Exactly, because large insurance companies and the banks that process their transactions operate across state lines. They are heavily regulated by federal banking laws.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, if a bank processes a direct transaction for a Schedule I drug, they risk federal money laundering charges. The systems simply aren't built to absorb that kind of legal risk.
That is wild. So how on earth does a doctor get compensated for providing this care if they literally can't bill for the medicine?
It's quite the workaround. Instead of billing for the product, providers have to bill for the peripheral activities surrounding the treatment.
What does that mean?
They use specific coding to bill for the initial patient evaluation. They bill for the complex treatment planning required to map out the dosages. They bill for the ongoing medical monitoring and, the related medical management of the patient's condition over time.
Okay, think about it like this. This is crazy. Imagine you are trying to expense a business dinner to your company, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
You take a major client out, you have a great meal, and you hand the receipt to your corporate accounting department.
Right.
But the accountants tell you, sorry, due to corporate policy, we don't reimburse for food. So instead, to get your money back, you have to submit an itemized invoice billing the company for, like, the time you spent talking to the waiter, the effort it took to secure the table reservation, and, I don't know, the physical wear and tear on the napkin you used.
That is exactly it.
But the actual steak, the main thing you went there for,
Yeah.
that is completely invisible on the bill.
It sounds totally absurd when you frame it that way, but clinically, that is exactly what is happening.
Wow.
The physical product is the steak, but the workers' comp system will only pay you for the time spent analyzing the menu and checking to see if the client choked on the meal. You are billing for the management of the treatment, not the treatment itself.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare of a documentation exercise. I mean, if I'm a doctor, my job is to treat patients, not figure out how to perfectly disguise a steak dinner as a napkin consultation.
Right, it's exhausting for them.
I mean, how many ways can a provider trip up when the rules are that convoluted?
Oh, dozens of ways. And the research outlines the biggest pitfalls providers face when submitting these claims.
What's the biggest one?
Well, number one is weak documentation. So, missing a date or failing to list a prior treatment. Number two is vague treatment justification.
Makes sense.
But honestly, the most dangerous pitfall is a psychological one.
Psychological, how so?
It's assuming that because public opinion on cannabis has relaxed, the bureaucratic approval standards have relaxed too.
Oh, right. There's a brilliant insight in your notes that really jumped out at me. It says that optimism mixed with incomplete paperwork guarantees a swift denial during utilization review.
Yes, that is a harsh reality for many clinics.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the mechanics of utilization review, or UR, because it's basically the gatekeeper of this entire process.
Right, the UR desk.
Yeah, UR is the mechanism where the insurance payer evaluates the medical necessity of a request. And it's not just one person looking at a paper.
Who is it?
It usually starts with a claims adjuster, then escalates to a nurse case manager, and if it's really complex, it goes to a peer review physician who has never even met the patient.
So you have a doctor who is paid by the insurance company looking strictly at a checklist, basically trying to see if your paperwork matches the MTUS guidelines exactly.
Exactly. They are actively looking for holes in your documentation. And when a cannabis-related request hits that UR desk, it receives vastly heightened scrutiny.
I bet.
If you walk into that process armed only with a general sense of optimism that, cannabis is legal in my state now, so it should be fine, but your paperwork is missing the proof of those failed physical therapy sessions,
You're done.
you will be denied immediately. The algorithm, the adjuster, and the reviewing doctor will all say no.
So why is the utilization review putting these specific requests under such a microscope? I mean, is this really just a grand debate about the lack of long-term clinical evidence, or is it, as it always seems to be, just about the money?
It's undeniably both. I mean, it is true that payers have lingering questions about long-term clinical efficacy, right?
Yeah.
And how to standardize dosages, since you can't exactly prescribe a perfectly standardized milligram of a plant in the same way you can a manufactured pill.
Right, it's not a factory-pressed tablet.
Exactly. But if you look deeper, their biggest, most existential fear is broader reimbursement exposure.
But hold on, let me touch back on that for a second. Put yourself in the payer's shoes, sure. But aren't payers already paying for decades of opioid prescriptions?
They are.
And those aren't cheap. And they come with massive secondary costs, right? Addiction treatments, specialized rehabilitation facilities, emergency room visits for overdoses.
Oh, the costs are staggering.
So if opioids are already costing the system billions, why is cannabis financially scarier to an insurance payer than, say, OxyContin?
That is an excellent question, and it brings us to a really fascinating mechanism within workers' comp: lifetime medical awards.
Okay, what is that?
You have to understand that workers' comp is not like your standard health insurance. If you get standard health insurance through your employer and you quit your job tomorrow, your insurance changes, right?
Yeah, you lose it or get a new one.
But in workers' comp, if you suffer a severe injury in 2026, that specific insurance policy from that specific employer might be legally on the hook to pay for your injury-related medical care for the rest of your natural life.
Oh, wow.
That is a lifetime medical award.
So a claim can remain open for 30, 40, maybe even 50 years.
Exactly. Now, to address your point about opioids versus cannabis, yes, opioids are incredibly expensive, but they are FDA approved, deeply standardized, and have highly predictable pricing models that actuaries can just plug into a spreadsheet to calculate risk.
Okay, the math is easy for them.
Right. Cannabis, because of its federal status, is largely unstandardized in its pricing and administration. If a payer agrees to fund a chronic pain management strategy involving cannabis, they have no idea what that market will look like in 10 years, let alone 30.
Oh, I see. So if you approve this one single case for medical cannabis without an ironclad, hyper-specific reason, what happens? The fear is that you just open the floodgates. Suddenly, a precedent is set. Every other injured worker with a lifetime medical award for chronic pain points to that single case, starts asking questions, and demands the exact same unstandardized coverage.
And if you multiply that unpredictable monthly cost by thousands of claimants over 30 years, the financial exposure becomes mathematically astronomical.
The actuaries just panic.
They panic. That is precisely why they fight so hard to keep the gates closed and why they require such an exhausting burden of proof to open them even an inch.
Okay, that makes complete sense from a risk management perspective. The old operating system is absolutely terrified of what the new software is going to cost to run over the next 3 decades.
Perfectly said.
So, what is the game plan here? If a medical provider is navigating this minefield, trying to get help for a patient who truly needs it, what do they actually do?
Well, the documents provide a very clear 3-step playbook for providers. Step 1, you absolutely must understand your state-specific regulations.
Because it varies everywhere.
Exactly. Because workers' comp is handled at the state level, the rules in California are going to look vastly different from the rules in New York, which look different from Florida. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. You have to know the specific codes and laws of your local jurisdiction.
Okay, so knowing the state law and the local terrain is step 1. But even if I'm a doctor in a weed-friendly state like California, based on everything we've talked about, I'm assuming I can't just scribble, give them some gummies on a prescription pad and call it a day.
Definitely not.
The paperwork must be an absolute nightmare to get past that UR desk we just talked about.
It is, which naturally leads to step 2, building extremely detailed medical necessity documentation. And the research makes a point to emphasize that language matters significantly.
Okay, language matters. So what does this all mean for the actual words written on the page? We're not just talking about having neat handwriting or spelling things correctly, right?
Right. No, we're talking about the specific medical and legal terminology used in the patient's chart.
Give me an example.
Well, you cannot just write, "patient feels better on cannabis."
Because it's subjective.
Exactly. That is subjective, and it will be denied by the utilization reviewer instantly. You have to speak the language of the operating system. You have to use terms that signify measurable objective data.
So what's the right way to write it?
Instead of "patient feels better," you have to write something like, "patient demonstrates a 40% improvement in functional mobility, specifically the ability to sit at a desk for 4 continuous hours, alongside a complete cessation of opioid reliance following the introduction of a managed cannabinoid protocol."
Wow, managed cannabinoid protocol. I love that phrase.
And you finish it with, "This treatment was initiated only after the documented failure of 3 prior conservative therapies."
That is brilliant. It takes something that sounds casual to an old-school insurance adjuster and dresses it up in a suit and tie. It sounds clinical, precise, and highly regulated.
It is exactly what the UR desk needs to see to check their boxes. You have to provide defensible data.
And what's the last step?
Finally, step 3 in the playbook. Prepare for denials and appeals. Providers cannot submit a request, even a perfectly documented one, and expect a smooth ride.
Right.
They have to build their initial request with the baseline assumption that it will be denied on the first try, and that they will have to fight for it in the formal appeal process.
So nobody should be going into this expecting a simple rubber stamp process. You have to basically pack your lunch and prepare for a battle of attrition.
Definitely. It requires clinical precision, legal vocabulary, and highly realistic expectations of the timeline.
Well, as we wrap up today's deep dive, I think the core message from your research is remarkably clear. securing cannabis-related treatment in the workers' comp system isn't impossible, but it is a massive uphill battle.
Absolutely.
It is less about hoping for easy approval and entirely about mastering the art of carefully structured justification.
That's the key takeaway. Providers cannot rely on public opinion, they cannot rely on shifting cultural trends, and they certainly cannot rely on optimism.
Yeah, optimism won't pay the bills here.
Right. Workers' comp is a system that revolves entirely around strict compliance and highly defensible treatment rationale.
And for you listening, whether you are in the weeds of medical billing yourself, or you're just fascinated by how massive, rigid bureaucratic systems attempt to adapt to cultural change, the overarching lesson here is pretty universal. In a battle between a shifting cultural trend and an entrenched bureaucracy, thorough documentation always beats optimism.
It really does. Because a trend is a feeling, but documentation is a fact. And insurance systems only pay for facts.
Sure do. Before we go, though, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that really struck me as we were piecing this all together today.
Oh, what's that?
Right now, as we've discussed, providers are forced to jump through these incredible circus-level hoops, essentially billing for the management of the treatment rather than the actual cannabis product itself. It's the ultimate workaround, like expensing the waiter but not the dinner.
Right.
But imagine a future where federal laws around cannabis eventually shift. Let's say it gets removed from Schedule 1, and federal banking laws finally